100 years ago, the world fought over oil. Today, the new battleground is copper, and the old superpower just lost its grip. In the next few minutes, you'll see how a single merger turned Canada into an unlikely kingmaker, left Washington on the outside, and rewired the map of global influence one red metal at a time. We'll follow three threads. First, why copper, not oil, now sits at the center of power. Second, how Canada overtook both the US and China on this one. And third, what this means for the energy transition and for anyone who still thinks alliances are built on geography alone. Before we get into it, just as a brain teaser, if you had to choose which is the greater asset, controlling the oil fields of the 20th century or the copper mines of the 21st, drop your thoughts in the comments below and we will revisit this in the end for sure. What's more powerful than oil? It is not gold, not even lithium. In 2025, the world quietly admitted the answer, it's copper. It's an odd sort of power, unglamorous and often overlooked. Copper doesn't headline the news the way oil spills do. There is no copper cartel, no famous embargo, no cinematic chase across the desert. Instead, copper is everywhere and nowhere. It wires, it links, it breathes electricity into the world we've built. You won't find it on the covers of glossy business magazines, but every humble phone charger, every soaring wind turbine, every ambitious data center is woven through with copper's invisible threads. If you drive an electric car, you're driving a copper vehicle, literally. The average EV uses 4 times as much copper as its gasoline ancestor, while wind turbines drink it by the ton. Modern militaries trust copper's pulse for everything from radar to drones, their power flowing through cables that are essentially lifelines. And if you've ever wondered what ties together the future of AI, green energy, or even national defense, it's probably copper running quietly behind the scenes. And the numbers whisper something oilmen never really hear: scarcity. For years, analysts treated copper as a mere commodity, reliable, abundant, almost dull. But demand crept upward, supply lagged, and suddenly the world found itself on the wrong side of a bottleneck. By 2035, even the most cautious forecasters admit that global shortfalls could reach millions of tons per year. This is a gap large enough to slow down the entire green transition. But here's what sets copper apart: its indispensability. Governments from Washington to Brussels have staked trillions on the premise of a net zero future. Solar panels, batteries, grids, vehicles, the list grows longer every quarter, but without copper, net zero is a headline, not a plan. The artery is essentially the constraint. Whoever holds the artery holds the pace of the future. And if that sounds abstract, consider this. In a world chasing electrification, power doesn't just come from what you generate, but from what you can wire together. If you want to support this kind of analysis, cutting through the noise, there's a Ko-fi link below. Every contribution helps. I'm also writing a book on how to think critically, which now has a name: Awake, the Practice of Critical Thinking in an Age of Soft Lies. So if you're up for having a look at that once it's ready, please do put your email below in the waitlist so you're the first one to know when it comes out. In September 2025, the copper map was quietly, almost politely redrawn, and not in the places you'd expect. Not in the dust of Chile, not under the neon haze of Shanghai, but in a boardroom with one foot in Vancouver and the other in London. Anglo, the British mining giant, shook hands with Teck Resources, Canada's homegrown miner with global ambitions. The headline number was 53 billion, but the real story was what they built: a new pipeline of influence. For years, Canada has played the world's polite resource provider. Lots of minerals, plenty of forests, and always the quiet middle power, reliable, steady, and usually content to let bigger players set the rules. This merger changes that. Suddenly, Canada isn't just stocking the shelves, it's guarding the vault. Instead of middle power, Canada is now something closer to a gatekeeper. Here's why. Teck's treasuries aren't just up in the snowy Rockies. The real jewels are buried deep in Chile and Peru, smack in the world's copper heartland. Before this deal, those copper rivers mostly flowed into whatever markets global demand pulled them toward. And now, thanks to Anglo-Americans' reach and Teck's assets, those rivers have a current, one that runs straight through a network anchored in Ottawa and London, not Beijing or Houston. Almost overnight, Canada's voice in the global copper conversion got a whole lot louder. But this is more than just business. Call it industrial diplomacy if you like, because alongside this mega merger, Canada has been quietly building relationships, critical minerals deals with Germany, Japan, the EU. We have videos on those as well. Now add copper dominance to the mix, and Ottawa isn't just along for the ride, it has moved up to the front seat, map in hand. Every ton of copper exported now carries a little bit of Canadian strategy. And all the while, the US is watching, somewhat uncomfortably from the sidelines. For decades, America assumed that it could call the shots: oil from Venezuela, gas from Alberta, copper from Chile, always rooted by Washington design. Copper, though, was neglected, left adrift as American companies lost ground. Now, as Canada and the UK stitch together a new copper empire, Washington finds itself with no seat at the table it once took for granted. If you're enjoying this, I'd love it if you subscribe. The House of L is a community of thoughtful, curious people, and you're very welcome here. Who knows, maybe we can reach 50,000 by Christmas, or is that too optimistic? There is an irony to the story. The new copper superpower is not the world's largest economy, nor its hungriest. It's a country that until recently was seen as a polite supplier of raw materials. This merger is more than an accounting trick. It creates a Western behemoth, one of the few mining giants capable of countering China's vast state-backed quest for copper. Beijing has spent the last decade buying up copper assets from the Congo to Peru, yet suddenly the largest new supply chains are tied together in a transatlantic alliance that quietly locks China out. China, consuming more than half of the world's copper, faces a strategic riddle here: how to electrify its dreams without control over the arteries themselves. When copper prices spike, every EV, every solar panels, every train in China gets more expensive. The merger delivers a kind of leverage the West rarely achieves these days anymore, not through aircraft carriers, but through quiet market power. But the merger also exposes America's new vulnerability. The Pentagon calls copper defense critical. Fighter jets, missile systems, the whole architecture of American power built on wiring now traced back to mines in countries that Washington can no longer call its own. With a single deal, Canada and the UK transformed from friendly suppliers into rivals, or at least into sovereign actors with options. The final turn is, of course, Europe. For years, the US has searched desperately for alternatives to Russian gas and Chinese minerals. Now Canada, thanks to its copper and its critical minerals packed with Germany, offers a lifeline. Copper flows north-south and westward, not east. European banks are already wiring funds into Canadian projects. Brussels, at last, has a partner who can deliver resources without the volatility of American politics or the weight of Chinese subsidies. And here there is a subtle echo. The same way Canada is shaping copper now, it recently also redefined the aluminium trade, with Europe, not the US, as the primary beneficiary. If you missed that story, the video is linked below. But nothing in geopolitics comes without a catch. That $53 billion deal is a shield, sure, but it also is a doorway to a whole new set of risks. If you know anything about Latin America's mining landscape, you know that stability is never guaranteed. Governments change, protests erupt, one bad year in Peru, one political surprise in Chile, and a copper mine can go quiet for months or even years. Then there are the fights over water, environmental protests, shifting local rules. Every time a new mine is approved, somebody else is organizing to stop it. The truth is, all this new leverage Canada has found is only as strong as the ground it's built on, quite literally. Copper alliances can be fragile when the bedrock itself is restless. But that's the cost of having a seat at the table. Canada didn't just buy copper reserves, it bought exposure, complexity, and risk. Investment, in a nutshell. Every supply chain is a negotiation with history, politics, even the weather. Yet for the first time, a lot of these negotiations are being steered from Ottawa instead of Washington or Beijing or somewhere further away. That alone is new. So now comes the big question. What kind of power will Canada wield? Will it lean into the role of quiet diplomat, carefully balancing all sides? Or given its new position, does it play the part of the assertive gatekeeper? And what about Washington? Will the US settle for a neighbor as a competitor, or will it look for new ways to claw back influence in this new resource landscape? However it plays out, the answers will shape more than just the price of copper. They will help decide the tempo and direction of the entire energy transition. We are taught that global power follows armies or perhaps technology, but sometimes it follows wire, silent, red, and utterly necessary. Earlier I asked, which would you choose, control over oil fields or the copper veins of the 21st century? The world, it seems, has already kind of decided. Oil powered the last era's ambitions, but copper will decide whose ambitions serve the next one. The US for now appears to have lost the initiative on this one. Canada has stepped through a door it did not really design, but now holds the key to. Europe has found a new lifeline, and China must recalculate not with armies, but with spreadsheets. But power like copper is only useful if it flows. The real question is not who owns the resources, but who can direct its current, adjust its voltage, set its terms. Today, the map is being redrawn in contracts, alliances, and the quiet logic of supply chains. If you want to see how aluminium played the same role in a quiet register with Canada and the EU, that story is linked right here. And if you found something in the story that makes you pause, that is by design. Thank you for watching. The future is wired, and the world is learning quietly who holds the switch.